The Players Union actually sent a counter proposal to the WNBA. And the WNBA promptly rejected it into outer space, they Dikembe Mutombo'd that thing right back into the sun and said, we are not doing this revenue sharing thing. We keep telling you that, and for some reason, you don't seem to understand.
The WNBA just rejected the players' counterproposal so fast the ink didn't have time to dry. We're talking about a response that came back the same night with one word that matters: unrealistic. And with 80 days until the 2026 season is supposed to start, we're now staring down a scenario nobody wanted to say out loud. There might not be a season.
A counterproposal to the WNBA on Tuesday that included some concessions. I don't understand why all of this comes out late at night. They try to put this stuff out at night because they're trying to tamper down the blowback, and I'm not kidding you. All the news cycles are over with for the day, yada, yada, yada. That's exactly why they do this. So they won't get dragged as much throughout the day. I kid you not. Submitted a counter proposal to the WNBA on Tuesday.
Here's what the Players Union submitted Tuesday night. They're asking for 27.5% of gross revenue averaged over the length of the deal, starting at 25% in year one, with a salary cap just under $9.5 million. Now that sounds like a concession, because back in December, they wanted 31% of gross revenue and 28% in year one with a $10.5 million cap. They dropped their ask by 3.5 percentage points and called it compromise. The league looked at that proposal, ran the numbers, and came back with a statement that might as well have been written in all caps. This deal would cause hundreds of millions of dollars in losses for our teams. Not some losses, not manageable losses, hundreds of millions.
In its previous proposal in December, the union asked for the players to receive an average of 31% gross revenue, 28% in year one, and roughly a $10.5 million salary cap. The problem in all this is the word gross revenue. On the issue of housing, which has also been a critical point in negotiations, the players proposed that the teams continue to provide housing in the first several years of the new agreement, but that in later years, teams no longer be obligated to provide housing for players, making close to the maximum salary on multi-year deals and receiving full salary protection.
And here's where this gets specific. According to sources familiar with the league's projections, this new player proposal would result in $460 million in losses. Let me say that number again, because it matters. $460 million. That's not over 1 year. That's over the life of the agreement. But that's still a staggering amount of red ink for a league that's been subsidized by the NBA for its entire existence. Now you might be thinking, well, the players dropped their demand by 3.5%. That's movement, right? Sure. Except they're still demanding a percentage of gross revenue. And that word gross is the entire problem. Gross revenue means money before you pay for anything, before you pay for arenas, travel, staff salaries, marketing, production costs, all of it. The players want their cut calculated before the league pays a single expense.
We're not doing that because for some reason you don't know the difference between gross revenue and net revenue. WNBA released a fiery statement late Tuesday night calling the Players Union latest collective bargaining agreement proposal, quote, unrealistic, as the two sides remain at odds with the 2026 season scheduled to start in 80 days. Oh, that's not good. The Women's National Basketball Players Association submitted a revised...
Think about how that would work in practice. Let's say the WNBA brings in $500 million in revenue in year one of this deal. Under the players' proposal, 25% of that goes straight to player salaries. That's $125 million off the top. Now the league has $375 million left to pay for everything else. Arena rentals in NBA buildings don't come cheap. Charter flights for all teams, staff for 12 franchises, television production, marketing campaigns, medical staff, insurance, referees, all of it comes out of that remaining $375 million. And if those expenses total more than $375 million, which they very likely would in a league that's expanding and investing in growth, then every single team loses money. The owners write checks to cover the difference. And they do this year after year after year under this proposal.
It stands, quote, would cause hundreds of millions of dollars of losses for our teams. Well, according to Natasha Cloud, just write it off. Write it off. No big deal. They don't care if these owners ever make any money off this league. It's so wild to me. We still need to complete 2 drafts and free agency before the start of training camp and are running out of time, a league spokesperson said in a statement. We believe the NBA's proposal would result in a huge win for current players and generations to come. So there was a little bit more specificness to this retort right here. Amid the now 16-month negotiation, the league has continuously emphasized the importance of business health and sustainability. A source familiar with the situation told ESPN the league projects.
Now here's where player perspective comes in, and this is important to understand. Some players genuinely believe the owners are lying about the financials. They think the league is profitable or close to it, and the ownership groups are hiding money through creative accounting. You heard references to write-offs in that clip. The argument goes like this. These owners have other business interests. They can write off WNBA losses against other income, so they don't really care about profitability. That argument came directly from Natasha Cloud in a recent interview that went viral for all the wrong reasons. She essentially said owners can just write off the losses, so the players shouldn't worry about whether teams make money. That's a direct quote. Just write it off. As if a tax deduction is the same as profit. As if losing money on purpose is a sustainable business strategy. And look, you can have whatever political ideology you want about capitalism and wealth distribution. But when you're negotiating a business deal, you have to operate in the reality of how businesses actually work. Owners invest money expecting a return eventually. They'll tolerate losses during a growth phase, which is what the WNBA has been in for 28 years. But there's a limit. There's always a limit.
I mean, you can say you think the owners are lying all you want. I mean, you can say that, but it doesn't make it so. That doesn't make it true. I don't know what to tell these players. Yeah, it's how do you bargain with people that common sense is right out the door? And again, I don't think all these players believe that. I don't. But I think enough believe it. You've got enough Natasha Clouds in the mix to destroy the whole WNBA season.
The housing issue is actually one place where the players made a real concession, and it's worth acknowledging. In their new proposal, teams would continue providing housing for the first several years of the agreement. But in later years, players making close to the maximum salary on multi-year deals with full salary protection would no longer get team-provided housing. They'd be expected to find their own place to live like professional athletes in every other league. That makes sense. If you're making top dollar on a guaranteed contract, you can afford to rent an apartment. The league currently provides housing for all players regardless of salary, which is unusual in professional sports. This change would save teams money while still protecting younger players and those on minimum contracts. It's actual compromise, but it doesn't solve the fundamental problem. The gross revenue issue is the canyon between these two sides, and nothing else matters until that gets resolved.
Wow. So as long as they won't break on this revenue issue, I mean, they'd have to come way down. And you keep hearing from certain players, they're not going to cave on that issue. And then you got other players saying, it's already a split. There's already a fracture. The one thing I want to know, is there a world where the WNBA can just be like, bleep it, we'll play with replacement players?
So where does this leave us with 80 days until the season? The league says they're running out of time. They need to complete 2 drafts and free agency before training camp. Every day that passes without a deal makes the logistics more complicated. Teams need to know their salary cap numbers to make roster decisions. Rookies need to know if there's a league to enter. Free agents need to know if they should look at overseas options. And here's what makes this particularly precarious. There's a split among the players. You can hear it when different players talk about the negotiations. Some are dug in on the gross revenue demand. They see it as a matter of principle, of getting their fair share. Others are more pragmatic. They see the league's offer, which reportedly includes significant salary increases and improved benefits, as a massive win compared to the current deal. Here's what makes this situation so precarious. We're not just talking about a standard labor negotiation where both sides are far apart but moving toward each other. We're talking about a fundamental disagreement about how business works. The players' union is demanding a cut of gross revenue. The league is saying that's mathematically impossible without destroying the financial foundation of the league. Those aren't positions that split the difference. One side has to fundamentally change their position, and the clock is ticking. 80 days sounds like a lot of time until you break down what needs to happen. Let's walk through the timeline. Once a deal is reached, it needs to be ratified by the players. That's a vote that takes time to organize, especially with players scattered across the country and some overseas. Then teams need finalized salary cap numbers to make roster decisions. The draft needs to happen, and there are 2 of them now with expansion. Free agency needs to open. Players need time to negotiate contracts, pass physicals, relocate to new cities if they're changing teams. All of that typically happens over several months in an organized sequence. Now compress it into whatever time remains after a deal gets done. Every day that passes without an agreement makes the logistics more chaotic. And if we get to a certain point, probably sometime in the next 3 to 4 weeks, the league has to start making contingency plans. What does that look like? Delayed season start? Shortened schedule? Those options create their own problems with arena availability, television contracts, and sponsor commitments. But here's the scenario nobody wants to say out loud, but everyone's thinking about. What if there's no deal? What if the players' union refuses to move off the gross revenue demand and the league refuses to accept it? The nuclear option is replacement players. Could the WNBA operate with rookies and free agents willing to cross the picket line? Legally, maybe. The union structure doesn't prevent it the way some collective bargaining agreements do. Practically, that's a disaster for everyone involved. The league would lose its star power right when it's finally building mainstream momentum. Caitlin Clark, Aja Wilson, Brianna Stewart, all the players who drove record ratings in recent seasons would be sitting out. Sponsors might pull back. Television partners would be furious. Fans would be divided. Some supporting the players, others just wanting basketball back. It would set the league back years in terms of growth and credibility. And the players would lose too. They'd lose salary for however long the lockout lasts. Some would go overseas, but not everyone gets those opportunities, and the money isn't always better when you factor in the full picture. Younger players and those on the roster bubble would be hit hardest. They can't afford to miss paychecks the way max contract players can. That's where the split in the union becomes critical. How long will players making $70,000 a year hold the line for a principle that primarily benefits players making 10 times that much? The owners, for their part, would lose too. They'd lose the momentum the league has built. They'd lose the investment they've made in expansion, which brings 2 new teams and significant expansion fees. They'd face pressure from the NBA, which has subsidized the WNBA for decades and probably doesn't want a labor war playing out publicly. Nobody wins in a lockout scenario. Nobody. So why are we here? Why is this negotiation stuck on an issue that seems so fundamental? Part of it is the players genuinely believe they deserve a much larger share of revenue. They look at the NBA, where players get 50% of basketball-related income, and they want something comparable. They see the WNBA's growth in ratings and attendance and sponsorship, and they want to capture that value now, not wait for some future season when the league is profitable. But the NBA's 50-50 split is based on net revenue, not gross. That's a crucial distinction. The NBA players get half of what's left after the league pays its operating expenses. That makes sense because the league is profitable. There's money to split. The WNBA, by all accounts from the league, is not profitable. It's still in a growth and investment phase. Paying players a percentage of gross revenue means owners are guaranteed to lose money every single year of the deal. That's not a negotiation, that's a demand for charity, with no end date. And here's the thing about the write-off argument that some players are making. Yes, wealthy owners can deduct business losses on their taxes. That's true. But a tax deduction is not the same as making money. If you lose $1 million on your WNBA team and you're in the highest tax bracket, you might save $370,000 on your taxes. Congratulations, you still lost $630,000. That's not a business model. That's a hobby you're subsidizing. Some owners are willing to do that for a while because they believe in the mission of women's basketball. They think the league will be profitable eventually, and they're willing to take losses during the growth phase. But eventually has to arrive at some point. You can't ask people to lose money forever. Even wealthy people. Even people who love the sport. At some point, the business has to make business sense. The league's proposal, which we don't have all the details on but has been described as generous, reportedly includes significant salary increases, improved benefits, better travel conditions, and a path to higher revenue sharing once the league hits certain profitability benchmarks. That's a reasonable offer. It says we'll pay you more now, and we'll pay you a lot more later when we can afford it. The players are saying no, we want the lot more now, regardless of whether the league can afford it. That's the impasse, and with 80 days left, something has to give. Either the players accept that gross revenue sharing isn't viable and move to a net revenue model, or the league somehow finds a way to make the math work, which seems impossible based on the numbers they've shared. Or we're headed for a work stoppage that damages everyone involved. So what happens next? History suggests these deals get done at the last possible moment. We'll probably see a marathon negotiating session at 11 p.m. on a random Tuesday in a few weeks where both sides are exhausted and finally ready to compromise. The players will move off the gross revenue demand. The league will sweeten the salary increases and benefits package, and they'll announce a deal that both sides claim as a victory. But if that doesn't happen, if the players' union is truly dug in on this gross revenue issue and won't budge, then we're in uncharted territory. The WNBA has never had a work stoppage. It's never missed games due to a labor dispute. That would be a first, and it would come at the worst possible time, right when the league is finally building real momentum and mainstream attention. The stakes couldn't be higher, the positions couldn't be further apart, and the clock is ticking down to a deadline that's going to arrive whether both sides are ready or not. Seeing, with Rebecca.